That's an amazing challenge. I'm like, how can I add value here?
At first, thank you, Anthony, for coming, for joining our podcast. And we are making this series of interviews as a part of a Digital Pharma project. And currently, we want to share the experience of the market, not just all over the UAE or all over the GCC market, but all over the earth. And because of our company's presence in different regions, so we want people to know a little bit more about how pharmaceutical market is working in different areas. So first thing, thank you for coming. It's a great pleasure of mine to host you over here in our studio. And just briefly, tell about yourself.
Well, first of all, the pleasure is all mine. I am a big fan of your company. First of all, I've been following all your content, so it's really a great service you're doing to the pharmaceutical industry. About me, well, I'm 42 years old. I have built my career in digital marketing over the last, I'd say 16 years. Now it's 2022, so 16 years. And in marketing for around 22 years. And yeah, I live in Dubai. I'm from Pakistan. And let's begin.
When you were a child, whom you dreamed to become? What was your biggest dream at that time?
My biggest dream, I think it's safe to say that my dream was to become my father. So my father was a sports celebrity in my country. He was a 100 meters champion. And sometime in the 60s, he became the fastest man in Asia. He broke the record.
Really?
And so everybody everywhere loved my father. So as I was a child, everyone was talking. Every time I would go anywhere, oh, you're John's son, you're John's son, you know? So that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be him. Not just because he was loved by everybody, but also because he was a really cool dad. Mm-hmm. You know, he was amazing to me, and he was my hero, so I wanted to be like that.
Uh-huh. But did you do sports when you were a child?
Yes, not like my dad, but I did football. I used to run a bit, played cricket, lots of hockey, of course. So
ice hockey?
Field hockey.
Field hockey. Okay.
But that's why I also like ice hockey. So, yeah.
But why didn't you connect your life with sports, like a professional sport?
Honestly, I think while I would say on one hand, I was more drawn towards academic and mental acuity, but also the pressure on me by everybody. Why aren't you into sports? Your father's into sports, you know, and you should be like this. And I think that just put me off it, because mm-hmm. why do I want to do what everyone else wants me to do? Mm-hmm. So as you can see, I was a rebel from childhood.
Were you jealous about the success of your father inside of in sports? And
no, never jealous. I think it was because my dad was a humble man. You know, he never boasted about his accomplishments. You have all the medals at home, gold, silver, bronze, everywhere, but he behaved like he's a normal person. And so I was never jealous, because people made him a celebrity. He didn't think he was a celebrity. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you were a child, did you go to all those competitions with your father?
Oh no, he was retired by then.
Ah,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still, he was a celebrity.
Yes, yeah. Even after passing away, I remember the president of Pakistan called up our house to wish us after he died, you know, to give us his condolences. So yeah, he's a celebrity till today. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How you came to Dubai?
Oh, that's an interesting story. So I was never planning on coming to Dubai. I was in university, and I was, back home in Pakistan, you can sometimes fall into the wrong crowd. So I had friends, amazing friends, but they weren't always the right friends. And so my dad, he had moved to Dubai at the time to work, and he was following what I'm doing in my life. He's like, listen, I'm sending you a visa. You're coming to Dubai because you're wasting your life in Pakistan. Come here and build something of yourself. So that's how I ended up here.
Mm-hmm. But I know you also lived several years in Canada.
Yes, on and off. We were in Canada for a while. My cousins are there. My my grandmother's sister and her husband were there. Quite a big family actually in Canada. So that was Toronto. So if people are wondering about why I talk this way, it's probably a mixture of that as well.
How challenging it was for you to change the countries?
I I don't think it was challenging. The reason for that is because we have always been a traveling family. Um, when my parents first got married and I was born, we went to Europe when I was a child. Then we went to Canada when I was much younger before we moved. We went to London, and so lots of traveling within the Middle East. So it was always very normal for us to be on a plane. Then my dad, he was in the travel industry after retiring from sports. And so because he was in the travel industry, there was always an opportunity to fly somewhere. And so I think moving to a new country has never been challenging for me. It's like, all right, let's pick up my bags and go.
Can you call yourself as a person of Earth?
Yes, global citizen, absolutely. Home for me is where I am right now. It doesn't matter what country it is. So if I'm in a place for more than a month, that's home. Yeah.
Doesn't it create any sort of difficulties for you as a person, to establish the regular life routine?
What is a regular life routine? I mean, I don't believe in.
I do not know, build a career, for example.
Yes, but see, that's what I think. I think for the first 10 years of my career, it was a 9 to 5 job, waking up at 7 to make it to work, catching the bus or the metro or the train or whatever it is, and then you come home and you have 5 hours to have dinner and do whatever else you want to do, and then go to sleep and do it again, over and over and over. That's archaic thinking. The whole reason we have 9 to 5 is because in 1904, the Industrial Revolution began, and the optimal time was when the sun was up. But today we know that that doesn't matter anymore. So why should we follow this cycle of this is what society says, this is how you should work? I'm like, listen, if I'm productive, if I can do 8 hours worth of work in 1 hour, why do I need to work for 8 hours, right? So it hasn't been challenging for me at all, to be honest.
So you think the situation which the society faced during COVID and all this home office, this is the blessing thing for the society?
It was a very big blessing because people finally realized, oh, we're doing the same amount of work without sitting in meetings, without having to be sitting at a desk in an office. In fact, we're more productive because we're in a much more peaceful environment. We're in a safe place, which is home. I can have coffee anytime I want to. I can put the TV on anytime I want to. It's not affecting the quality of my work. So why are we going to the office for 8 hours a day and sitting at a desk and, breaking our backs? And I think that's what people learned. And also a lot of companies learned, because look at how many companies, one, they've stopped people from coming to work now, work from home. You're saving electricity, you're saving water, you're saving so many things, all because of this old notion that you have to be sitting in an office.
But what do you think about work and life balance? So when you're working from home, means you are living here and you are working over here. And when you have an opportunity to go to the office, means you have a kind of barrier when you can simply switch yourself off from the working mode and to become a human being, isn't it?
The first thing you said is, what do you think about work-life balance? I disagree with that completely. What do you have to balance? Life is life. Work is somewhere inside that. You're still living your life while you're at work as well, right? You're still going for a coffee break. You're still going for a quick smoke break downstairs because you want to have a break. Why do you need a break from something that you should be loving, right? So this whole balance thing, to me, the word balance, like, no, there's no balance. Life should be outweighing everything else, and that's how I think. So a lot of people don't agree with me, but yeah.
I believe you can say that because you are enjoying things that you are doing, and you are so happy that your work and your business is a part of your life. And so many people, they simply do the things that they have to do to get some bread.
Yes.
But
that's because they've been told this is the way you should do it. All of our schools and universities teach us or prepare us for a job in a 9-to-5 company. None of our universities and schools, at least when I was growing up, they never taught us to be freelancers. They never taught us to be consultants. They never taught us to be, entrepreneurs. It was always the 9-to-5 job for a salary at the end of the month, which is fine, but people have not learned that. So that's why if people have not been exposed to a way to live outside those society boundaries, it's not their fault, you know. And if it makes them happy, it makes them happy. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is the way I view it.
How you entered the pharmaceutical industry. What I'm hearing from you is such a progressive thinking, and what I know from my background and from my experience, pharmaceutical market is super conservative. So, how you entered?
Oh yeah, I remember that so clearly. I was in Siemens at the time, and when I finished my gig at Siemens, when I was the digital communications manager there, I received a call from GSK, GlaxoSmithKline. Up until that point, I had not been in pharma. I dabbled a bit in healthcare because Siemens has a healthcare division. So we would still visit the hospitals and healthcare.
But it goes for medical devices.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
a different segment.
So at first I thought maybe that will be something that will add to my knowledge, but no. I got the call from GSK, and GSK, the guy at the time, my hiring manager said, globally, pharma is slow in digital. And so this is 2014. However, GSK and a few other companies are trying to really supercharge their digital capabilities. And so we are hiring 8 people around the world for 8 different regions. Each person would be responsible for digitizing GSK in that region. And we would take the global mandate coming from the UK and localize it in our regions, as well as add our own expertise and knowledge based on each region we're from. And I remember in the interview asking about pharmaceuticals, and he's like, yeah, it's a very slow industry. It's also a heavily regulated industry. You cannot do all the things that you could do in FMCG or in real estate and stuff. And I'm like, that's an amazing challenge. I'm like, how can I add value here? You know? And I think that's why I wanted to join it, because he's like, we need people to come and tell us the way to do it, because if we try and rely on people in pharma, they're stuck in that way of thinking of how pharma is. We need people to come from outside pharma and show us the way. And that's literally why I joined the pharma industry, out of the blue.
But what do you think? In my understanding, pharma is super conservative because it's connected with healthcare, and healthcare is all about humans and their lives and life savings and etc. And when you are super progressive in it, sometimes it can be harmful for people's health. So sometimes you need to double check and double check when it goes about R&D and all other environments, and only this can bring the stability to healthcare system. So how pharmaceutical companies can become progressive in this field?
So you need to understand with pharmaceuticals or marketing in pharma, it's a two-pronged sword. I wouldn't say sword, that's not the right word. I would say you have to look at it in 2 ways. Number one, pharmaceuticals exist to improve the health and life of people, okay? So when you're doing marketing, for sure you're doing it because of course you need to increase revenue so that you can put more money into R&D, right? And you have to pay salaries, you have to do all this stuff, right? It's not a charity. However, at the same time, the people you're marketing to are humans. So you cannot talk to them robotically. Even when you go to a doctor, he's talking to you as a patient, but as a human. He's keeping in mind your feelings, your insecurities, your fears, but also your hope. So when we're marketing, especially in digital marketing, we can talk about medicines, we can talk about healthcare, but in a human way, which digital allows you to do. Because normally, if you just hand something, like I think we can talk about how the old ways of marketing was you give a leaflet, you give a poster, you give a brochure. That's very impersonal. And one brochure is the same thing going out to 10,000 people, right? So it's not personal. And what if the person reading it is not of the same mindset? So he's not, even if it's written very nicely, he's just going to keep it down, right? But I think with the way pharma can be progressive, as you asked, is nowadays, because of the wealth of data we have with digital, we can narrow it down to people who have these kinds of insecurities, to people who are rebellious, to people who are conservative, to people who are soft, to people who are tough, and tailor the message to each person as if they're human beings who are individuals. And I think that's how pharmaceuticals should be, and that's how we should be marketing.
Tell us, if you can, of course, how this digital transformation of GSK happened. So, as far as I got, you were there at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And
So
how it was?
I think what was really good about GSK, and GSK did this very well, is that it empowered everybody. It didn't matter whether you were the head of digital sitting at the headquarters of Asia, or you were the digital executive doing like rolling up your sleeves and doing the grunt work. Everybody was empowered, everybody's ideas were listened to, and nobody was really the expert. Everybody was, I'll repeat that because of this thing. Nobody was really the expert. Everybody was given a chance to show how they can grow digital. And I think that was important because right from the top, there was a vision, and the C-suite in GSK enabled the next layer, who were the directors, who enabled the next layer, who were the managers, enabled the next layer. And it was very easy to pick up the phone or email the global director of digital, and they would listen to you. So I think that's really, for me, a great indication of how GSK did it right. Yeah.
But how instruments improved?
Sorry?
How instruments that you used for marketing purposes improved from manual one into digital one?
Oh yeah. So I think, and this is, I know this doesn't sound sexy enough for the industry, and a lot of digital marketers don't like to go and talk about this basic foundational thing, but it is the most important thing, and we started with this. We began our digital journey by going out into the market and asking permission from doctors everywhere to contact them digitally, to use their email address, to use their mobile number, and we asked them how they want to be contacted. Email, social media, SMS, phone calls, like how would you like us to be in touch with you? We gave them the choice. And because of that, our database grew. We had a massive database of doctors who clearly told us yes or no, get in touch with me or don't get in touch with me, and how. And so I think because of this basic foundational level, all the other channels we introduced later, we could tailor it to different doctors. You know, and that really helped, because the first email campaign we sent out was the open rates, like it was way beyond the global average, and that showed us that it's always important to listen to your customer. So I think when you asked about how instrumental was this in changing, yeah, I mean, as long as you don't forget, it's easy to think about the big, amazing digital campaigns, but if you don't have the small, simple digital campaigns figured out, there's no point doing the big ones.
You need to make a test first, then scale.
Start small, scale quickly, exactly.
But when it went about implementing and about having those discussions with doctors, how open they were towards using all these digital instruments in contact?
Surprisingly, they were very open. So a lot of people don't realize this, but whenever you think of doctors, generally, as a consumer, you think of doctors, you think of that old man behind a desk with a stethoscope and a lab coat. You don't think of that person as digitally savvy. That is far from the truth. There are doctors who are very digitally savvy. There's a way to measure doctors' digital savviness. We created a rating scale. And when we did a market research into the digital savviness of doctors in the Middle East region, it blew our minds. Why? Because it threw a lot of assumptions out the window. We found out that, if I remember correctly, this is 2014, over 75% of doctors were using Android, not iPhones. And I remember, this is for the UAE and GCC at that time. And why this was important is because the general perception of mobile apps and mobile games and everything, the first thing you think is iPhone, iOS, App Store. So we said, oh, we've been making apps for iPhone, but most of our doctors are using Android. Why? So we asked the question, and the answer surprised us, because most Android phones are bigger in size, and so it makes them see the reports in a bigger window. You would never have thought of that. And starting out in digital and pharma, we learned our lesson. So we started really pushing Android apps and so on. The second thing we learned was the doctors who were not, I would say, extensively digitally experienced, they still wanted digital exposure because they are all patient focused, and their patients are always on their mobile, always on a laptop, always, and they have kids, they have families. And here's a lesson that I learned, and I want to share this with the audience, is that a doctor is still a family man. He's still a normal human. When he goes home, he's switching on the TV on Netflix. He's using his mobile phone to send a WhatsApp message. Everyone who's listening to this podcast right now uses a mobile phone for their alarm clock, not a traditional alarm, right?
Exactly.
Yes, so does a doctor. So isn't he a normal person who has digital access? So we have to get this perception out of our mind that doctors are not digitally savvy. Doctors engaged immediately with us. When we asked doctors, would you like to give us permission to use your email? He's like, oh, what are you going to send me? You see, the excitement was there. And another thing that we learned, they thanked us because like, oh, finally somebody's asking for us permission. We keep getting this spam from other pharma companies. And they don't even ask if we want to have this email. I don't even read these emails because it's not related to me. But if you have done your homework, if you go and engage with the doctor, he wants to be digitally appreciative and he wants you to ask him, what do you want to know from us?
Mm-hmm. What do you think today, when it went for 2014 till now, a long journey has happened already.
Yeah.
And when it went about 2014, the lack of using the mobile internet was, and currently we can use our mobile internet everywhere. Don't you think that digital channels are already spoiled a little bit when it goes about professional audience?
In what way? What do you mean?
I mean that doctors and pharmacists, they receive so much of information from everywhere. And you know, when you are using too much of instruments, sometimes you become much more tolerant towards all the actions and towards all the activities. So, and in this way, sometimes when making so many contacts with audience, especially when we are when we are speaking about final customers, the audience is super huge. But when we are speaking about doctors, and for example, not GP doctors, but specialists like, I do not know, neurologists.
Yeah, or rare diseases.
Rare diseases. This is super limited audience. And
everyone's talking to him.
Everyone is talking to them, and it's so easy to make them burnt and to become tolerant and to make them ignore all the messages that goes through social media, that goes through emails and etc. So what do you think of this? Have we already made this audience spoiled with all these digital instruments or not?
Yes, we have. I completely agree because I'll tell you a story. 2 years ago when COVID hit, right? COVID started and everybody, all the pharma companies were forced to go completely digital because you couldn't send medical reps anymore. You couldn't have physical meetings anymore. You couldn't have hotel meetings with doctors. You couldn't do any of that, right? The only tools you had were online. So what do? We were forced to, globally. And I still remember within weeks, we started seeing webinars on Zoom and Cisco and everything else, and all these pharma companies were doing a great job. You know, hot speakers, great topics, key opinion leaders coming and giving webinars about key pharma topics. However, my medical reps came to me, all right, when I was the global head of digital at Gilfar, and they said, Dr. Anthony, I don't know why they call me a doctor, I'm not a doctor, but it was so common. It's like, Dr. Anthony, we need to do a webinar, please, let's do it. These guys are doing it, those guys are doing it. We need to do a webinar. And I was excited too. I'm like, okay, well, let's see. So I started doing some research. I went online, I went on LinkedIn, I went on different websites, and I started seeing everywhere were just webinars. And I thought to myself, these doctors must be getting sick and tired of 1 million webinar invitations every single day, right? Whether it's a GP or a rare disease doctor, right? And if he's a rare disease doctor, 20 companies contact him for a webinar, how much he has to visit his patients, he has to do his work, when is he going to go for a webinar, right? So I was thinking, I'm like, to him, it's spam. No matter how good the webinar is, it's spam for him because he's bombarded. Which one does he attend? So I turned to my team and marketing team, I'm like, listen, let's not rush. Let the initial craze die down, right? And then let's find out from the market, let's do some market research and ask doctors what has been their experience with webinars and then make a decision. So we did that. We did a market research and we asked GPs, we asked rare disease people, we asked surgeons, specialists, and we segmented the data. And we asked them like, and the answers were like very interesting. How many webinars would you like to attend in a month? 2, maximum. How many speakers in a webinar would you like? Panel sessions, like 2 or 3, because that's very common, or 1? 1. You know, and we asked questions like, why 1? And they would say, well, most webinars are just 1 hour. And if we listen to a specialist, I don't want to listen to a specialist for just 15 minutes. I want to listen for an hour so I get as much information. Once that specialist 15 minutes, then the next one comes. Okay, but I'm still thinking about the first topic. So you're not giving me good quality in a longer period of time. And so I'll forget what I went for. And so we learned a lot of things, but what it made me understand, and then we did our webinar 4 months after the lockdown happened. And in our first webinar, we had 2,000 doctors attending because we took our time, listened to their feedback, and then developed our webinar based on that, right? Instead of just doing it because everyone is doing it. So to answer your original question, based on this story I said, is it saturating the doctors? Is it spamming them? Yes. So what do? Go and talk to the doctor, ask him, what do you want, really? Do you want a webinar? No? Okay, we won't do it. Do you want to receive emails from us? No? Okay, we won't email you. So how would you like us to? He might say, no digital, only come and meet me face to face. Okay. That's what it is.
You know, managing the company that does around 100 online events every single month for different countries, of course, so I'm saying it in general. But I know what it is like to have the events where more than 1,500 people are attending. How did you manage the technical issue of this event? Because 2,000 is, oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
It was super challenging.
It is, it's not. But you know, it is challenging. But how did I manage this? I'll tell you what made it very smooth, because I have to say it was very smooth, our first one. The whole team wasn't just involved, but we did a run through. We didn't just do the practice of the webinar. We gave each other very specific roles and made sure that that person understood the role, practiced the role, and most importantly, we had a very clear crisis plan for any webinar. The audio stopped working. Okay, don't panic. Okay, we had a set message to send to all the attendees. We had a set message to quickly WhatsApp to the speaker, and we had the tech person ready to fix the audio issues remotely as well as on our own system. So everyone knew what to do in case everything went crazy, right? And because we knew, nobody was worried. And when it came to the number of people, what was very important was we had a set number of people in the panelist section who weren't panelists. They were solely there to monitor questions from 2,000 people. They were there to monitor repetitive. They were there to monitor the chat. They were there to monitor everything. So everybody had a role. And I think that's what made it easy. It doesn't mean that you need 20 people. You can just do it with 5. As long as all the 5 are confident, understand it, and know their job, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. I remember when we were just starting going into this size of audiences, and it was several years ago. Right now we have instruments that are about to handle this sort of capacity of channel. But at the time when we started, 2016 or so, the maximum capacity was not more than 500.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I remember like we started a kind of event and everything fall down.
Oh goodness. What did you do?
The scheme, like risk scheme, just restored everything. First issue is to calm down and to understand that no one died, everyone is alive and everyone is healthy.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll tell you a very interesting story on this. This actually happened to me last year. It was a very important webinar that was happening in Saudi Arabia. I was managing the webinar, and it wasn't a webinar for our company. We were hosting a webinar for a huge specialist hospital in Saudi Arabia. So this was a completely third party. And technically we were the third party, right? It was a 7-day webinar series. Day 6, everything's going fine. 90 minutes into the webinar, it was a 6-hour webinar, different speakers. 90 minutes into the webinar, I was working from home. I went to make a coffee to my kitchen. And I was sitting at the webinar at my desk for the whole 1 hour. Nothing, everything is smooth. I left my desk to walk to the kitchen, and immediately my phone rang. Hi, Anthony, everything stopped. Like, what do you mean? I looked and everything had shut down. And all the speakers were already there. It was all lined up and the system was there. I think it was 700 attendees were all there. Zoom, it just closed. So it ended the webinar. Nobody pressed anything. It just happens, right? Things happen.
And sometimes technical
And
issues.
so the poor guy who was at the other end, he was a very sweet person, the doctor who was in charge from there, and he was freaking out, poor guy. And he's like, what do we do? Oh my God. I'm like, all right, first thing I sent him was like, calm down, it's okay, don't worry.
Everyone is alive,
We
everyone
will
is
fix
healthy.
it. 5 minutes later, it was on again. And he sent me another message like, oh, thank you, thank you. I'm like, as long as you don't panic, there is a solution. If it's technical, there's a solution. That's the basic thing, right? If it's technical, somebody will have a way to fix it. Always remember this, and your webinars will be fine.
You know, one question I'm really curious about your point of view about this is, I will just share the case with you. The case goes from some partners of our company in Russia and some company of our partners over here. So I will not speak about the name of the company because it's not correct, but just generally. When it goes about the Russian case, the partner of ours is one of the hugest multinational company. They operate with more than 65,000 of hospitals, clinics, and pharmacies. And they are doing it with the help of 20 field force managers.
Okay.
And this company, they're having around 300 brands inside of their portfolio. So this is like a really huge company.
It's a mega company.
Yeah. So the second case goes over here. This is the average size distribution company. They are working with around 60 brands, just covering the territories of the UAE and like Oman, not entering the Saudi Arabia market. And for 60 brands, they're having 40 medical representatives. For the general amount of clients at around 3,000 of points of healthcare retail. So what we can see from this case is the efficiency of usage of medical representative as a tool. And in different conferences, like in some regions, people are saying that medical representative is not such an efficient instrument, and everything or so many things that medical representatives are doing, it can be done through digital instruments. What do you think about this?
I disagree completely. As a digital person for God knows how long, I 100% disagree that medical reps are out and no longer the future or the present, and that digital can replace them. I will never believe this. I believe digital exists to enhance the medical rep's function. The medical rep is the core, best sales tool a pharma company has, and it'll always have. I'll give you an example of this. All of us today, especially during COVID, we use food delivery apps to get food to our house, right?
Exactly.
Even from the best restaurants, we will order it online and it'll come home. But what we would rather like is to go to that amazing restaurant, sit there, order from the menu, the waiter will come, you'll have a chat, the ambience is nice, and you will eat from the chef 5 minutes ago he prepared it, right? The human element will never be replaced by digital. I mean, no, the human element will never be under digital. Digital will help it, but you will always crave connection between humans, right? So while I can send a great email campaign or a great social media campaign or a fantastic mobile app or website for a doctor, a face-to-face conversation between a really good medical rep and the doctor is far better than any email I can send. So what do we do in that case, right? We equip that medical rep with all the digital tools that he needs to have a better relationship with that doctor. For example, I can say, So, Dr. Elena, we had a great conversation today about this medicine. Are you confident about it being good for your patients for this particular therapeutic area? And the doctor will say, yes, yes, I really like this part. It's like, oh, you like this? Okay, so what I'll do, doctor, is when I leave now, I'll make sure to send you a PDF with all the information that you requested on this particular topic. I won't bother you with all the other things because we already know that. But I'll send you about this. Maybe I'll send you a video about how this medicine works in the person's body. Thank you, doctor. Have a great day. He goes out, and in the waiting room, he goes to his iPad, clicks tap, and a video about that function goes to the doctor. How do you think the doctor feels now? Amazing human element, plus the digital part attached to it. He feels better.
But do you think it's good to compare the visit of medical representative to a doctor with going to a restaurant? Because when you're going to a restaurant, you're buying not food over there, you're buying the atmosphere. And when you just want to have food, you can either make a delivery or you can either prepare it for by yourself or whatever. When it goes about a visit of medical representative, this is not about atmosphere. Doctor is not about to buy the interest of medical representative. So this is kind of, don't you think this is a different?
No, I'll tell you how. There's a restaurant with amazing ambience. It all the things, the right music, the right lighting, but the food is horrible. Would you go to that restaurant for the ambience? No, you wouldn't. Same way, sometimes when you go to some countries, the best food is on the streets. No ambience, but the food is amazing. It's the content, right? So, and the content is who? The chef, the specialist. And the chef is a human, and the waiter you're talking to. When you go to have a nice meal on the street side, you'll talk to the guy who's coming. He's like, make me the best tea you can make. Something, I'm really hungry today. You see how, and the waiter will be like, I'll do it, you know? You see that interaction?
But isn't it the combination of the place, the human impact,
yes,
and the atmosphere?
The combination of the medical rep and the doctor and the digital, irrespective. So for example, medical rep, right? He goes to one doctor in this hospital, amazing hospital, completely state of the art. But he also might visit a small family clinic where it's not a very rich clinic. It's not not amazing lighting, everything, but they do a great job with the patients. Same medical rep, different kinds of doctors.
When it goes about atmosphere, what do you think of all those hotel conferences and other sorts of engagement between pharma companies and doctors?
Oh, I think it's all fine. I think, look, doctors are human beings. They need to get out of the clinic sometimes. You know, I have amazing artists who are who I listen to on CD, who on radio, but it's different going to a concert, paying, and still enjoying the same music, but live in front with them, you know, outside my home. And I think with doctors are humans. They want to experience what they love, which is medicine, outside the confines of their thing. So digital is great, webinars are fantastic, all the other things are fantastic. At the same time, you can have a great digital experience in the hotel. You know, we did an event, I think a year ago, in which it was in a hotel, all right, with I think it was 120 doctors, and we had screens set up, and doctors were also watching and viewing from hotels in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, in Kuwait, in Oman, and the UAE, and we had cameras set up in each of those venues. So it was a hybrid event, live speakers, and in the other countries they were watching on Zoom, and then in the other countries the speaker came on and we were watching here, but it was all in hotels. So you see, it's all this mixture of experiences that's so rich, and digital helps it.
Tell me your attitude to all those KPIs which medical reps and people who are organizing all those offline conferences have. So what I know is that generally the main KPI goes is the number of attendances, right? So number of doctors who visited this particular offline conference or attended online. So and all of us, we understand that this is useless to invite someone who is out of the industry, who are not doctors, who is not your target audience. This is just waste of time and money and useless. And This is the case as well from the experience that I had, from the discussion that I had with other healthcare professionals from other pharmaceutical companies. So when it was a boom of all those offline events, one of the company in one of not super big city, they were organizing offline events for a really limited specialty of doctors. As far as I remember, it was about urologists, and there were just at least, I do not know, 15 urologists for this town, and there were 2 pharmaceutical companies who compete for these doctors. And you know, once I faced one of those doctors, and just this doctor said to me, if I would visit these events of this company and then visit these events of this company, when I will be doing my job with my patient? And within some discussion, it became obvious that people who were entering that event, they were not urologists, they were not target doctors. And these were just maybe students of medical faculty, and this is the best scenario, or maybe this was some kind of strangers. And on the one hand, a person who was managing all these offline events, he made his KPI, was like a great successful person. But the company, the head office that was located outside of that town, and of course they were unable to understand all those details, small facts about this particular field. They just wasted money for this. Have you faced such sort of cases, or maybe you heard about this, and tell me your attitude towards it? Because so many people, they want to do their KPIs to get their money instead of achieving the result. And they do not care about the result of the company.
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a problem that, it is a problem in the pharmaceutical industry, and I think the cause of this is not, how do I phrase this, right? The problem doesn't lie with just the marketing people who are doing this or the salespeople, because unfortunately, I think we'll cover this in another question, but unfortunately sometimes senior management only wants to look at numbers on certain things, right? So how many doctors attended? 20. Why 20? Why not 100? But the 20 are valuable. The remaining 80 are not that valuable. Why would I invite them?
It's just a crowd.
Yeah. So do you want to have? And so I think we need to retrain management, senior management, into thinking about this. And you asked if I'd heard this. Yes, I've heard a lot about this. I remember there was exactly what you mentioned, similar to what you said. There was a webinar for urologists. And in this webinar, I remember the person who was running the webinar said to me, Tony, we had around, I think, 550 or 570 people attending, out of which maybe 400 were pharmacists, right? Maybe they got some value from it, but the entire session was very technical, detailed medical information for hardcore urologists. You know, what did the pharmacist take away from it? But for the pharmacist, it was good because he could go and tell his company, I attended a webinar about urology, for example, right? And so we went back, and the management loved it. That person told me is that, oh wow, so many people attended. That's amazing. That was the KPI. The problem is you spent a lot of money. You know, you've made medical reps go and visit those people and invite them. You know, so there's all this waste of time as well and effort. For what? For a KPI that doesn't matter. I would rather pharmaceutical companies invite 20 doctors who will actually generate revenue than 500 who are just a checkbox and add no value. Because that also goes to the doctor, because those doctors sitting there, maybe he's attending and he's a specialist, but the question and answer field is full of irrelevant questions from pharmacists, and his actual question gets lost in the middle.
Makes sense.
Right? So he's not going to waste his time with this company. And let me flip this on a point for you. You mentioned, you know, numbers. There is a rare disease field. I can't remember the disease itself, but there's only 2 doctors in the whole UAE for that disease. If you do a webinar, only those 2 people are going to come. So do you not do the webinar, or do you do the webinar?
I would invite them for coffee.
or, or you do the webinar, get one amazing speaker who will impact these two specialists, and now those two specialists are famous all over the UAE for the people who have that disease, and now they will trust them more, invite other people, know about it, so now this doctor is being seen as a peer and your pharma company is seen as, wow, they really do care. They're willing to do this to educate that one doctor.
But this goes about different sorts of webinars. This goes about engagement with the final patient into that.
Maybe.
And this is a different instrument.
Maybe.
But do you think really the final patient, they do care of which sort of, who produced the medications they're taking?
Oh yes, you'd be surprised. This is one thing that I've learned being in the pharma industry. When you're a patient, and you're not in the pharma industry, you're just a general person who's having any kind of disease, you might, at that time you don't realize it, but subconsciously you recognize brand names of pharma drugs. For example, everybody, and I'll take the names because it's common knowledge, everybody knows Augmentin for antibiotics, everybody knows Panadol for headaches, everybody knows. However, if you say paracetamol, which is the molecule, immediately they think of Panadol or...
Everyone knows Panadol, no one knows paracetamol.
Yes. So you see, it's brand affiliation. And when you tell people, for example, GSK, they may not be able to tell you which drug from GSK, but they know GSK, the pharma company, and they know it's important, it's good. However, then when you talk to mothers of children, they know the product and they know the company making it. Mothers are very careful about certain products for their children, especially medication. And they can ask, like we used to have this in Julfar, we would have mothers go to pharmacists, and one of the most amazing products that Julfar makes for children is Profanol, which is a medication for children's fever and headaches. And there would be times when maybe a doctor has prescribed a different medication. Mothers would go to the pharmacist and say, the pharmacist will put the medicine there. Like, no, I want the Profanol, the one for the children, by Julfar. They know. And that's why it's important. They do know. The world is changing. It's no longer the 80s and 90s where you trust blindly what the pharmacist. Now we are aware of what's out there. When you go to pharmacy, you're looking around at stuff. And remember, we are now in an age of digital, right? With mobile apps, we're ordering medicines at home through pharmacies online. I can see which brand is doing which medicine, and I can order from that.
But you can order, you can do that just with non-prescribing drugs.
Nope. Things have changed again. There are pharmaceutical apps now in the UAE where you can order prescription drugs from that pharmacy as long as you take a photograph and upload the prescription onto the app. They will deliver it to you because they're now verifying your prescription and charging your insurance. So yes, it can be done.
Do you think the role of a pharmacist as the final person who is delivering the medication to a patient is decreasing nowadays?
I won't say it's decreasing. I'd say it depends on the medication. So nowadays, if it's general over-the-counter medication, people are ordering at home. I remember in the first year of COVID in 2020, sales of the pharmaceutical apps, including InstaShop's pharmacy section, skyrocketed. I think it increased by 600% sale volume. I may be wrong, don't quote me, but it was an insane number because people were now at home and they were forced to order at home, right? So I think now people are going to the pharmacy if it's important stuff that they want to take the advice of the pharmacist or they want to browse or certain things, or prescription. It's definitely changed. So that's why a lot of pharmacies now are trying to get their own delivery systems in place online and not use things like InstaShop.
Mm-hmm. When it goes about the digital instruments and all these channels and technologies we are using, what do you think, where we will be within nearest 5 years?
That's a great question. People ask me that. I will answer with two scenarios because both are going to happen. On one scenario, where are we going to be in 5 years? We're going to be not very far because pharmaceutical companies, as digitally savvy as they want to be, in this region, many of them are still stuck in the old way of thinking, where short-term sales goals is more important than long-term goals.
But not everyone can afford themselves.
I know. So my point is that those companies will slowly grow, and finally they may have a mobile app for their pharma business. They might have a website for doctors that are focused on their medication. You might have that. You might have video calling for medical reps, maybe. But then you have the really strong, good vision, good execution pharma companies who are going crazy. And so in that case, in 5 years, I think the following will be happening, my opinion. You will have virtual reality for medical reps as well as for consumers and doctor visits. You will have augmented reality for pharmacy visits. You will have video calling for general, what do you call that? When the patient visits the doctor, I forgot. Consultation.
Telemedicine.
Yes, telemedicine. Even now, telemedicine is really at its infancy.
Because in some jurisdictions, it's against the law.
Yeah, that will change. In 5 years, that will become the norm. So I think these things will be very important. Also, I think in 5 years, especially in cities like Dubai, which is so strong in digital health and enabling and digital infrastructure, I think healthcare and pharmaceutical engagement with patients and consumers and doctors will be omnichannel. Every different channel can speak to the patient and the doctor. It's not going to be only email, mobile, and social. It'll be everything. And I think that's going to happen.
Imagine I'm a person who is a student and I'm about to enter the pharmaceutical market, or I'm dreaming of to become a pharmacist or a doctor. Having your experience and having your understanding of how the marketing works and what's going on in the market, what you would advise me? Which segment, or maybe you would advise me not to go into healthcare at all?
That's a great question, and you probably don't know this, but when I was in Julfar actually has a student training center for medical students of universities to come, and in that training center, I used to train the marketing aspect of that. And these students are coming who are studying pharmaceutical or studying medicine, and they're coming to do an internship and students and 5-day student workshop in Julfar. What do they do in that? They visit every single section of a pharmaceutical company who's in the manufacturing and marketing and sales, supply chain, quality, R&D, everything, to give them a clear understanding of what happens in each subpart. And at the end of that, it helps them to understand, you know what, I like that. That's what I want to specialize in. So I used to have people who come into my marketing class in Julfar, and when I'm done with my marketing class about pharmaceuticals, digital, etc., some of them would come to me later for a conversation, hi, can I have a coffee with you, sir? I'm like, sure. And they would tell me, before we came to this, we didn't realize that marketing was so important. Now I want to check if my university can help me with marketing, and I want to study marketing for pharmaceuticals. You see, so my advice to students in medicine today, go to pharma companies and ask if you can intern there for maybe a month. Get an understanding of how the different divisions in pharmaceuticals works, because maybe you didn't realize that there's such a division in which you are personally talented, and maybe that's something you can build your career on. Don't just decide sitting in the university.
So it's better to have all the experience from the field.
Yeah, and it
this
doesn't take
this is your advice, how it would sound like.
Yes, and be bold, be courageous, go and do it. Don't expect your parents, who of course they're supportive, to tell you, because they don't know. You know, I'm telling you now that this is one of the best things you can do as a pharma student. Go out, speak to pharmaceutical companies, ask if you can intern so that you can learn how the business works, and then decide.
Great. And small blitz in the end of our talk. Just a second.
You forgot to ask me one question.
Which one?
My favorite campaign or something like that, or something that I really, maybe I don't want to talk about. You said there was a question about that.
It will go. It
Oh,
will go. Do not
good.
worry. So, cats or dogs?
Both. I'm an animals fan. So.
Dubai or Abu Dhabi?
Neither.
But you're in Dubai.
Yeah, I love them, but I can't choose.
Okay.
So I don't want to choose.
Okay. Lying on the beach or hiking in a mountain?
Early morning hiking in the mountains so that I can go and lie on the beach later.
Nice. Okay. Snow or sun?
Snow.
Snow. Putin or Biden?
Putin.
Why?
Oh, because with Biden, I never know if what he's saying is political, financial, designed to confuse people, or for votes or anything. It could be anything. With Putin, what he says is what it is. You know this is what's going to happen. You know, it's clear. So that's why.
Okay, imagine you are in front of Putin. What would you ask him? Or what would you say to him?
What would I ask him? What's Russia's best vodka, and have it with me? Because with him, he will only choose the best.
Okay, if you were able to send a message to yourself like 20 years back, what you would send to yourself? Or if you could take a time machine and meet yourself 12 years back, what would you say to yourself?
Wow, that's a great question. I actually did ask the same question to a mentor of mine many years ago, and when I was starting my career. What would I do? I would tell my younger self, always question why. If something is not working, a campaign is not working, why? If the campaign is working very well, why is it working so well? What's so good about it? How can I make it better? Question people. Keep questioning. Don't take things at face value and for granted. You know, so if something is working very well, great. But why is it working so well? Mm-hmm. Always question. Always.
But this goes just about your business life, or
no, everything in life, in relationships. Like, this is working so well. This relationship, why is it working? What am I doing? How can I make it better? Because a relationship also has to get better and better and better in different ways. In friendships, you know, why are we just doing this? Why don't we do that? Keep questioning. Education, why am I studying this? You know, maybe it's because my parents told me. Maybe it's because the society thinks this is the in thing now, so I should do it. When you're older, it's too late to ask why about those things. Ask when you're younger.
Great. Thank you, Anthony.
It's
pleasure. Such an amazing discussion.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Whom you want to see next? Feel free to leave the name of your candidate in the comments down below. And like, subscribe, and press the ring button to see our latest updates.